And part of the reason why MF Global went down was that they were highly leveraged, I think 37-1. They were buying all these bonds, but they were also buying credit default swaps from banks like JP Morgan, so that if they did go down, if their investment wasn't as strong as possible, they could always rely on the credit default swaps. So what happened was you had a partial default by Greece, and then the bankers decided that nobody can cash in their credit default swaps, and it's not deemed a default. And that's what brought down, originally the MF Global complex was the investments weren't bad because he had hedged them with credit default swaps. The problem is the counterparties on the credit default swaps couldn't have covered the losses. So as Europe goes, Europe will probably go first, at least the euro. All it takes is one country to stand back and say, hey, I'm done with this. I'm not giving up the sovereignty of my nation for a bunch of bankers who want to take over the continent. We're going to default on our debt. We don't care who offers us a bailout. We're going to close our borders and we're going to take care of our own people. That type of stuff is going to happen. And the moment that happens, you've got maybe 2 or 3 weeks before the whole thing implodes, including all the global unbacked currencies.
Thank you very much. That was helpful.
Sure.
Yes, indeed. 2 to 3 weeks. A very short time period once things start to blow. For our next topic area, we'll turn to and begin to cover the players. And again, for our first 2 questions, we'll turn to Romans. Romans?
Okay, Bix, and you just kind of briefly just touched on this. Based on a recent email update from you, can you give us your latest take on the state of affairs and where it stands with regard to the silver derivative situation with JP Morgan and whether their huge short position still exists and how that will affect the timing of future moves in the silver price?
Sure. As far as I can tell, the latest bank participation report came out from the CFTC. And it showed pretty much no change in the position of the large short position. Now, the large short position has gone from 40,000 contracts, which is 200 million ounces 2 years ago, and is down now to around 16,000 contracts. And that number, if there's 4 or more banks that hold that short position, then they have to write the number down on the report. If it's less than 4, they remove the number entirely. So it can be up to 3 banks holding this 15,000 or 16,000 contract short position, which is very interesting because according to the new position limits rule that is still delayed, but we're getting there. According to that rule, right now with the structure of the market, it's about 5,000-6,000 contracts that could be held short and still be within that rule. So if you have 3 banks holding 5,000 or 6,000 contracts each, they are beneath that level. And I think Bart Chilton a while back said that JP Morgan was already back on sides, so to speak. So the position limit rule will not crush the banks now, and that's kind of why they've been delaying it. But what it will do, it limits the amount of manipulation going forward. So yes, I believe JP Morgan and the bankers, and it's not just JP Morgan, against all the silver holders. The silver short has been passed around started Drexel Burnham, and then it went to AIG, and then it went to Bear Stearns. All these companies went down, by the way, and now it presides at JP Morgan, and theoretically they've hedged enough and have enough legitimate exempt silver shorts that I believe they're within the levels of the coming position limits rule. But that's kind of where it is. The key is not, when they implement the position limit rule, the key is not having that take down the banks. The key is that from that point on, they can't build their short position past that 5,000 or 6,000 contract rule. So that's the interesting part. As far as the investigations into JP Morgan, they're still ongoing. They're not ongoing. They've already decided that there's massive evidence, and this was years ago. They're just delaying and delaying and delaying because they know once they raise the red flag and say J.P. Morgan has been busted for rigging the silver market, you've got lawsuits up the yin-yang. You've got people rushing into silver. You've got all the silver bugs in the world jumping up and down saying, I told you so, I told you so. You've got regulators who will be shown for the farce that they are. So it's a big deal. It's going to happen, but I think the charges against J.P. Morgan won't happen until everything else starts to blow up.
Okay, well, I got to tell you, Bix, it sure appears to me and many others that the CFTC is purposely dragging their feet on imposing any serious fact-finding or discipline in the silver futures trading market. How can these guys be viewed as having any credibility on what they say at all?
Well, when you study the CFTC, and this version of the CFTC was put in place in the early 70s, right when the computer rigging started, and it was put in place to run cover for the computer riggers. There has been no, the joke of the industry on the legal side has always been the worst lawyers were at went to the CFTC because you had a couple people controlling the whole thing, and then you had a bunch of lousy lawyers and lousy commissioners and things like that who either aren't smart enough to figure it out or are in on the game and they run cover. They'll take down who they want and they'll leave the big guys to control the markets because you must control the commodity markets to have an unbacked fiat currency. And this was proven in a letter that one of the CFTC judges, when he was about to retire, this guy, Judge Levine, or Judge Painter, in his retirement letter said that the other CFTC judge, Judge Levine, promised Wendy Graham, who was the CFTC chairman back in the 90s, he promised her he would never find anybody guilty of manipulation on the plaintiff side. That is a huge revelation that came out about a year ago. And for a judge, and there's only two judges at the CFTC, for one of the judges to say, hey, the game's been rigged all along is just a gigantic red flag. And it's an endorsement of the Road to Ruta theory that they're doing this all on purpose. And the SEC and the CFTC are put in place to run cover for the manipulation crowd.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Bix. I know there's a whole lot of people out there that are really anxious for justice to prevail here.
I'm one of them.
Me too.
Good. Yeah, I know we'd all like to see it coming in, which kind of leads me to my next question, Bix. This is McLaren. The CFTC in recent testimony before Congress and in statements regarding their enforcement efforts have deferred to the SEC's calendar regarding the definition of swaps. If the CFTC can't move until the SEC does, doesn't that provide the bad guys with a continuing upper hand as the banks and market riggers exert huge influence over that body of so-called regulators?
Yes, basically flat out yes. The SEC, if you compare the two organizations, the SEC is 10 times as big as the CFTC, has huge markets to oversee, and is also 10 times more corrupt. The SEC oversees a system where people buy and sell stocks, bonds, pretty much everything except commodities. They oversee it all, and they are completely in the hands and the pockets of the big banks. So if it's in the big banks' interest to delay, they will. And this is what's happening with the definition of swaps. Now, the key is, though, that the SEC is being taken out. They're being taken down and shown for the fraud that they are by the good guys. And it's the CFTC that has really the pull now because they got enough commissioners on the CFTC to take down this whole system when it is time. And this delay with defining the word swap is, it's ridiculous because they've been regulating the swaps market for countless decades, and now they're just trying to define it. It is clearly a delay tactic, but they're not going to delay it for that much longer. Right now, it looks like they're going to get the definition in mid-January is what Gary Gensler is his latest estimate. And then the position limits will be implemented in mid-March. And if you listen to Cliff High, that's about the same time that it's going to get really squirrely in the market. So that all makes sense. And in the end, the bad element at the SEC will be removed. And I believe most, if not all, of the bad element at the CFTC has already been removed. So we're getting there. We're just not there yet.
Okay. Thanks for providing us a little bit of perspective with regard to when we might expect things to happen. Kind of shifting gears here a little bit. In the last interview, you pointed out that with White House Chief of Staff Bill Daley, Jamie Dimon's right-hand guy, who is now seated next to Obama on a daily basis, if the debt ceiling is not raised or if QE3 or other measures were not established, that dire consequences would result. And that given those circumstances, that now, at that time, is the opportune time for the good guys to put a stake through the heart of the vampire bankers. To me, at least, it appeared that the good guys didn't take advantage of that opportunity. What, if anything, has happened that would support that view of yours, and do you still hold it? And what is the chance for a stake to be driven through the space where a banker's heart should be?
Do bankers have hearts?
I'm not really sure. I think it's a big void.
No, I do believe that the good guys have stuck a few daggers in the hearts of the bankers. And let me tell you why. Back when we talked last, I think it was June of this year, everybody was still talking about green shoots and how we're in a recovery and all that. And the things that have gone down since then, the first big one was probably the downgrade of the U.S. debt, which is like huge behind the scenes. And all this goes on behind the scenes because the derivative market is just gigantic. And you're starting to see kind of the flailing of the markets and of the second thing and the biggest thing is the takedown of MF Global. That has the potential to destroy all unbacked fiat currencies. When people lose faith in the markets, you're going to see people trying to get out, and these banks are leveraged 30, 40, 50 to 1. And as people, it's great when the price of assets are going up, but when people pull back and the price of assets start going down, they have to sell more and more and more of their assets to just maintain their base tier 1 capital. So those two things are happening. Europe is imploding. And that's all part of it too. So I do think there are stakes being stabbed in the heart of the bad guys. The mistake the good guys made in 2008 was when they last tried to take down the system, was that they thought that killing Lehman would make everything implode. Just one stab to the heart and everything is gone. And it almost did. What they're doing now is a little more drawn out, but they're driving stake after stake after stake into the heart of these banksters. So the banksters are getting staked, shall we say. It's just going to be dragged out for longer than it took before in order to take them out fully and completely, which is what has to happen.
Yeah. I guess they forgot that they needed a silver spike in order to take down the Federal Reserve. But oh well.
They can. I mean, that truly is the silver spike. Driving silver to $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 an ounce would destroy the entire derivative complex because J.P. Morgan owns most of those derivatives, and if they go, everybody goes.
Yeah, well, let's hope that the silver spike will take down the Fed, and then we can move on to something that's of more sound and stable basis. The next question for you, Bix, is going to come from Alan, and it's on behalf of forum member Plain.
Well, yes, good to be back again, Bix. It seems that we're talking here about some kind of high cabal, to use Churchill's phrase, that are in charge or at least exerting a lot of influence upon the banking system.